Imagine the power to create worlds and bring characters to life. That's the realm of comic book artists. My name is Ray Raynette, and welcome to Farlook Studios. I'm a self-published comic book writer and illustrator, and today we'll talk about 10 things that helped me improve and create the comic of my dreams. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more secrets, and go check out and read my comic book series, Junket, Hidden Worlds Revealed, only on Amazon. Now back to the video. Today, we'll be discussing 10 things that we could learn from the great and late Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby, the king of comics, was a visionary artist and storyteller whose influence on the medium is undeniable. Not only is he the man who single-handedly penciled out the entire Marvel universe as we know it, creating all of the characters within the Avengers, Fantastic Four, Black Panther, and even creating the prototype for the Thanos figure within the DC universe, making Darkseid, Apocalypse, the New Gods, and bringing together the DC universe like never before. One of the first things that we could learn from his artwork is his dynamism. The way that Kirby's panels were always bursting with energy and movement. You would never get bored from reading his books. So we're going to have to learn how to integrate that within our own work. You've got to learn to use the action lines, the speed lines, and all of the dynamic poses to create that excitement. He's always creating and contorting the figures in such a way that is reminiscent to the more modern creators such as Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man and all that, where he's literally contorting the body and the anatomy to better suit the image. It's all about hyper-stylization. Most people think that his work isn't exactly pretty, but it's definitely super fun to look at. Kirby primarily does this by foreshortening and really just mastering perspective. He was a master of perspective, and he used it to create these dramatic and immersive scenes. So we have to learn to study perspective, right? He doesn't typically use actual perspective grid lines, but you could give an impressionistic kind of approach to the background designs. He was a master at creating mechanisms and technology that's never been seen before, and he would make it seem as though it were real and it was grounded in reality, but also in this fictitious otherworldly magic. And not only was he experimenting with visual designs, but he would create these very different comic book layout designs. He was constantly pushing the boundaries of the comic book design as a whole. So don't be afraid to experiment with new layouts, characters, and concepts. One of my favorite things that he ever did was in the early Fantastic Four, he would break down the story into different parts. Each part would have a new unique title, so it almost felt as though we were reading multiple books in one. Including in Thor, he would have a back bonus feature. After the 15 pages of the normal story, there would be an extra bonus 5 pages, and it would typically be better than the main book. It would be Tales from Asgard, this crazy otherworldly medieval kind of Norse god mythology that he would weave into these worlds. And that's definitely one of the things, is that he tells epic stories. Kirby's stories were often grand in scale, filled with cosmic battles and heroic figures, so we have to learn to craft epic narratives and capture that imagination. We have to learn to not only make something that's enjoyable for the reader, but we have to think in terms of making it enjoyable for us, because we're the ones who are creating it and drawing it. So if it fuels you, then it's going to fuel the reader. We have to create memorable characters. Kirby's characters were iconic and unforgettable, such as Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, the Hulk, the Thing, the Fantastic Four. He would create the Galactus and the Silver Surfer. So you have to remember that you have to develop characters with unique personalities, backstories, and each have a visual design that's distinct from the last. The way that he would typically do this is the use of symbols. Kirby was a master of symbolism, using visual elements to convey deeper meanings. Learn to incorporate symbolism into your storytelling. This goes into a deeper conversation and how he would harness the power of mythology. Kirby often drew inspiration from mythology and folklore. We would see this echoed later on by Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy. He would always go back and research and dig into the ancient mythology and folktale and fairy tales of the ancient olden world. He would weave that and bring that into his new stuff and make it feel like it's a brand new story that's never been seen before, because when we stylize them like Kirby did, we not only pay homage to the great storytellers of our own past, but we bring it in a new, fresh way to a brand new audience to learn the same lessons that were brought before us. Another great thing that Jack Kirby would do is that he would embrace exaggeration. Kirby wasn't afraid to exaggerate his characters and the settings for a dramatic effect. Ultimately, you're telling a story. You want it to be memorable. You want it to impact the reader. So we must learn to really use exaggeration to create these memorable and visually striking images. Something that Jack Kirby would often do is that he would collaborate with writers. Kirby would actually be one of the main artists that Stan Lee would work with. It would also be others like Steve Ditko, John Buscema, and all of these other great artists, but Kirby primarily focused on the panel layouts, the structuring, the pacing of the book. He would be the one who pencils it in its entirety, and he would allow Stan Lee to maybe fix the words that Kirby may have scribbled on the page. Stan Lee would not only embellish it with his own writing and his own amazing flair, but he would almost add more life to the image by giving it its praise. So Kirby's success was often due to his collaborations with talented writers. So we must learn to work effectively with these writers to help create compelling stories. The most important thing is to never stop learning. Jack Kirby continued to evolve and experiment throughout his career. He would always strive to improve his skills and explore new techniques, and so should we. Jack Kirby started way in the early 50s, in the 30s, in the 40s with Captain America, when other smaller characters, the Blue Beetle, all of these things that were almost forgotten. He would later have the chance to bring them back to a modern age and retell them with Stan Lee within the Marvel comics. Before it was Atlas, before it was Timely, all of these characters were something that was in his mind. And if he had stayed the same artist, then you would not be talking about him to this day. His art has changed dramatically through the decades, and you could see the progression from his early work, how it was kind of more chaotic and confused, to his more renowned, more clean, more linear storytelling with multiple characters, multiple emotions, and dramatic settings, such as in The New Gods, which I think is his magnum opus. Kirby would somehow weave these magical ideas between the whole world of his books. Somehow he told one massive linear story from the beginning all the way to his passing, right? So he started off with the old gods, right? He would name them that later. It would be Thor and Odin and Loki and all of these characters within the tales of Asgard. And he would always hint to something called Ragnarok, right? It was the Norse gods equivalent to the apocalypse, right? To Armageddon, right? To the end times. So he would always weave that in, and he would write about that within the early incarnations of Thor. And when he left Marvel and he went to DC, he not only brought those ideas in with him, but he grew them, he expanded them to a size that was not even understandable at the time. No one had done something like this before. We have to remember, everyone was doing just another, Superman fights a monkey, or the Flash turns fat. That's what DC was doing at the time, right? Batman was fighting aliens, but Jack Kirby was making this new story, this fresh take, this continuation to his work, even though it was in another company. He would literally make the New Gods this entire interwoven thing amongst 4 books, right? Or maybe technically even 5 books. Every single comic that he made, you could somehow connect it to his own, Jack Kirby universe almost. He would expand on it with the Eternals. When he once he goes back into Marvel, he would make the Eternals. He would go in the Inhumans and all of these characters that would really it felt like they were in the same world somehow. because they were all in his own mind. So don't be afraid, regardless of what book it is you're making, whether if it's for a client, whether if it's for a small thing that you're just kind of experimenting with. Try to see how it is that you could maybe connect all of them in an aesthetic way that resonates to the reader. And you instantaneously, once you see a Kirby page, all of the artists will tell you it's almost undeniable when you know it's Jack Kirby or not. You always know. He never inked most of his work, but you would still know whose work it was because his style was so vibrant, so different, so action-packed that you could always tell from a glance. So never forget to strive to make your own things come to reality, because it's you who are going to make and improve upon the past in order to inspire the future. Alright, this has been Ray Nat from Farlook Studios. Go hit the drawing table, go put the pencil on the page and get some work done. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Please comment, like, subscribe, and put notifications on to stay updated. Check out my self-published book on Amazon titled Junket: Hidden Worlds Revealed Part 1.